maybe. All right, amazing warriors. We're really excited to present this opportunity for you to level up your branding. I know from being in the warrior group since 2020 that this is a conversation, like a topic of conversation that comes up every single time I go to a boot camp, every time I go to any event. Everybody's like, oh, I got to get my website. Oh, I got to, work on my marketing. And I've learned by working with Monica that it's really not our marketing so much that we need to be working on. It's our branding so that we're authentic and we're coming across clearly and effectively to our ideal investor and the people we want to serve. And that is why this is why I'm reached out to Monica, who I am very close friends with. And that came about just by nature of she rebranded 3 Keys Investments and the Conscious Investor podcast. I felt like that was an impossible task of anybody. So the fact that she's able to take my investing brand and my podcast and merge them together so that they were harmonious was magnificent. But I've also seen her magic, because I think it's just absolutely magical, work with so many other people's websites and branding, they're branding so that their websites and all their content is really delivering in a powerful way, which is why then I'm like, hey, let's do something that is for all of our amazing warriors and make it an exclusive warrior only event to serve you. So this is my best friend, Monica. She's amazing. And I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm just going to talk
Thank you.
and gloat.
So I'm even more excited about being here with more warriors because it was how we connected was through Steve, who's a warrior. So Steeve Breton connected us. We worked together first, and then we just never stopped talking after your project. So one of the things that Julie was talking about, though, was websites and building trust. So that's the basis of everything we're going to talk about today. But sometimes I think we just get so in the biz that we kind of forget and don't take the second to imagine just how much trust it really does take for an investor to hand over 50K, 100K, 500, or even 1 million for years to someone they haven't even known that long, haven't even met in person. Like, we're educated in this space, or we've done it. So we kind of like forget how hard that it can actually be. And then when you're doing capital raises, you remember, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is hard, but it takes the courageous type to do this, or else you guys wouldn't be here. So I already know that's who you are. And for anyone else, it just takes even more trust. So if you're going to be landing high net worth investors, or those that trust you so that talking to them is a breeze and they don't back out at the end of the deal, or right before it starts, or right at the end of the capital raise, you need a strong brand and massive brand trust. And the center of that trust falls around the website when working with leads and making connections. And I know you guys know that, or else we wouldn't be here talking about websites today. But that's also why I work with real estate investors and financial services, because we and you guys need to build more trust than any type of other business out there. Maybe minus like a brain surgeon. So everything that I'm going to cover today is going to help you build that brand trust authentically and stand out in your industry. But you guys did answer those questions for me at registering, and I promise there's going to be at least one area that you can crank on and get some massive leverage that's going to make changes in your branding and website, marketing, social media, raising capital, networking, talking to investors better as well, even if you've never done a deal yet, or if you've done hundreds, and just knowing your next best step to take that's going to help you save some time and energy so you can scale up quicker and faster. So at the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you access to all of the slides with the QR code. So don't feel like you have to take frantic notes. Some of these have like diagrams. So I want you to be able to just recall and look back on those later, so you can just relax and absorb. But we're going to do Q&A at the end. So please do write down questions as we go through so that you don't forget them at the end, because it would be too hard to probably interrupt the flow of the process and someone's learning process if I do Q&A during. So we're going to definitely do that at the end. But in case we're running short on time, can you guys let me know if you would rather me focus on examples of what I'm sharing or leave more room for the Q&A? If you want to raise your hand if more examples is more helpful. Okay, a couple. And then we're going to be split 50-50, and then Q&A. Q&A more helpful. Not quite as much. Okay, so I'll kind of focus on examples. Again, if at the end you guys think of something, you can just email me, can make a quick Loom video and answer questions too. So don't feel like it has to be here, has to be now. So Julie, do you want to start the slide deck for me?
Awesome. I am going to start the slide deck. And with that, I'm also going to encourage everyone to please make sure that you, let me share my screen correctly. Please make sure that, or please feel free to drop your questions in the chat box.
That's a great idea.
Then you have them there. And if for some reason you need to drop off, then you have, your question will be answered. And so you'll be able to reference that at a later point. And then also, please make sure that you are silenced. And I want to highly encourage you, Monica is very sought after when it comes to branding. And this is an extraordinary opportunity to gain from like a leading expert in this, when it comes to branding. So I would encourage you to take your handheld computers and other devices, just put them away, silence them for the next hour, so that you can really absorb everything that she has to offer. All right.
Julie's the best host. She's so good. So what I wanted to start off with was just refreshing again. What is it that we were going to cover today? It might have been a couple weeks since you signed up. We're going to talk about the 3 most destructive problems on investor websites. And this is whether you're trying to build your website and don't have one yet, or you already have one and you can go back and you just can make it a more powerful asset for you. We're also going to make sure to cover the 4 parts of branding that are missing in your marketing as well. So Julie, if you want to hit the next slide, we're also going to cover these 4 other points as promised, what you need before creating your website or to make it better again, how to find what's slowing your growth. We're going to go through a flow chart, and that's going to be probably one of the favorite slides of the group, and how to build a brand that's memorable and attracts champion investors and make your website incomparable in your industry as well. So next slide, please, Julie. So pretty and professional websites fail every single day. A lot of my past clients have paid several thousands of dollars for a professional website, but they're like, I'm just not getting traction. I'm not getting signups. I'm not getting quality leads. Like, what's wrong? And I hate to see people in that situation when they come to me, because it's like, I'm really sorry to say, but we're going to need to do another investment. And whether it's rebrand or do-over, like Julie was talking about in her experience as well, like rebranding, it's like, it got me as far as it did, but now it's time to like move on, put that baby to rest and see where we need to grow. If you want to do the next slide, Julie. So why pretty and professional websites fail every single day is the majority of our brands and websites are built backwards. That's destructive problem number 1. But next slide, Julie. I just want to cover really quick, what is a brand? Before we talk about building them backwards, so we can understand what I'm talking about. When most people hear brand, they think about a logo or maybe a set of design guidelines with colors and fonts, or maybe even the assets themselves. Oh, my business card, my website, like that's my brand. But that's kind of like when we look at a car and we see a car and we call that's a car. In our mind, conceptually, we're just looking at a body and wheels. But what's inside of a car, the engine, the transmission, all of the hundreds of thousands of parts is what the car actually is and why the car works. It doesn't just sit in your driveway, never moving, just looking good, which might be part of the purpose for your car sometimes. But if you want it to take you anywhere, you got to make sure you have all these other parts. And that's the same thing that's happening on a website, essentially. If you want to do the next slide, Julie.
I've got a little lag here.
That's okay. And I don't know if I need the slide. Julie gave me such an amazing introduction, but I just wanted to cover essentially what it is that I do a little bit deeper. I'm a brand strategist, consultant, and a designer. I specialize in real estate again, and financial services because you guys need so much help. I just am fascinated with real estate, personally love real estate myself as well. So over the past 5 years, I've created and consulted for dozens of investor brands, and those have become my favorite projects, helping you guys become incomparable and attract high net worth investors and trusting investors. I have a podcast with some content that's very helpful for people as they're looking to book me or just starting along this journey. And of course, I host mastermind workshops like this, and I will be speaking at national real estate conferences and gatherings. But what I believe and why it's called authentic branding is that you don't have to be something you're not to market your business. to grow your business and have successful capital raises. People think, I need to look big, I need to look professional, like help me do that. And sometimes that's not necessarily what you need to do. So I'll feel like what we have to do. But I also believe that you can possess the magic of branding without having to learn it all and do it all. It can still work for you without having to be this master yourself. Next slide, Julie. Maybe I should have a hand signal. Can we do like a hand signal or something?
I know, and I think it went too. There we go.
Maybe when, oh no, yeah, you're good where you are right now. So, oh no, yep, yeah, we're at the right spot here. So a lot of people don't really understand, like, what is a brand consultant? Essentially, I help you create this concept and entity that takes you and your business where you want to go. And I'm going to take a second to share a quick story that goes along with this, because later we're going to talk about creating intellectual property for your brand. We're going to talk about brand story. All of these are pieces of your brand. And when I had a personal experience of having a very difficult time describing what it is that I do, what came out of that was an amazing brand story for me to use in my business. And so these are the exercises and frameworks I walk my clients through. But for this, for this story, I was at my parents' garage sale. We're out in the country in Colorado, and I met up with a neighbor of theirs that I hadn't met in 5 years. And she said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a brand consultant." And this is one thing, it's very important to watch people's body language, especially investors, when you're talking to them about capital raises. Try to look for keys that they don't understand about what you're talking about. Maybe they're doing the nod and smile, but like they're looking around, they're leaning back, they don't understand what you're saying. I could tell by her body language instantly, she didn't know what I meant. And then she leaned back and said, like in cattle. I was like, a brand consultant for cattle. My mind spun out so fast, even as a practiced brand strategist and marketer. I didn't even know what to say to that, because I pictured, what am I running around in the field telling the cowboys how to like iron the cattle? Like, would someone pay me for that? And it was like, no, like in logos and websites, because that was like grasping at straws. I didn't want to go into the thing with her. I didn't know how to describe my business to someone who didn't even know what branding was and thought of cattle. So the rest of the day I spent sitting on the chair in our gaps of the garage sale going, how could I have explained that better? What's wrong with me? Why didn't I have my spiel? Whatever it was. And I was watching the cars pass by. That's where my car analogy necessarily comes from. I'm like, I wish I could just stroll into a dealership and just, if I ask them, what is a car? They're going to tell me it's a designed and created machine to get you to where you want to go. And I just saw the parallel in that with branding and business. So the brand is also a created concept and entity that takes you and your business where you want to go. So essentially, when we talk about branding and marketing, if you want to do the next slide, Julie, some people get confused about the difference between the two. What's branding? What's marketing? Marketers will even confuse me about it. I'm like, what are you talking about? They'll talk about this is marketing, this is branding. And so how I would like to explain it and will help you move forward in branding and marketing your business is understanding that marketing is just the application of your branding. When we go from our business plan to marketing our business, we're missing this bridge in the middle. The bridge is branding. So we've got gaps in our business plan about who it is that we're serving. Now we're trying to go market it. But when we market without branding, all we can market is our services. And therefore, we are not incomparable in our field. We're not building that trust. And we're just struggling and struggling. It takes mass amount of time, resources, and you still just are having a hard time getting traction. So if we're going to switch to another analogy here, branding is the many parts that create that perception and that trust. So these are your individual bricks. And that's what we do together in my projects with my clients is we build all of these bricks. And then marketing is just the application and use of those parts. You can arrange these bricks to create something of a desired outcome. Do you want to build a wall? Do you want to build a fountain? Do you want to do a website? Do you want to do social media? Are you creating a podcast? All of these areas are just reusing all the parts of your branding. So for example, this presentation, when I go to make presentations and workshops, I don't have to recreate anything from scratch. I go to my branding, I go to my stories and say, what do I want to include or what don't I want to include? It's already there. So that's what I essentially, my goal is for my clients to not only have this website, but clarity in all these pieces where creating and doing everything is so much more effortless afterward. So next slide, Julie. I want to step back into how we're talking now about how brands and websites are built backwards. This is destructive problem number 1. Next slide. And the reason why we build brands backwards is because we're building them in the way that we experience them. The first interactions you have with the brand is what we see. We see a logo, we see a product design, we see images on a website, we see fonts and colors, and then we start reading. We'll read a business name, we'll read copy, one-liner, LinkedIn bios, the social media post. And then if we continue to interact with this brand at some point, we're going to find areas that we connect with them. I connect with this person in this way, or I like this brand because this connects to me here. And then we choose it. And if we continue to build a relationship with a brand, we then have this trust. I'm going to trust anything that this company comes out with because I have such a deep relationship with them, but this is how we experience them. So then, next slide, Julie. When we go to build our brand in our business, we're like, what am I going to call it? What's my logo going to be? I want to make my website. And we work on the visual expression because that's what our investors are going to experience and interact with first. Then we're like, well, wait, what am I going to put on my website? What do I write? What do I write in my LinkedIn bio? What do I post about? What do I make videos about? What do I speak about? And then sometimes people are just kind of spun and stuck up here on the top level of this iceberg, and they don't get deeper, or if they do, they're drawn down by, oh, I need a unique selling proposition or unique selling point. I've heard about that. Well, I watched this marketing webinar and I need a differentiation strategy, something. But you're trying to grasp for all these pieces after you've created this verbal expression, visual expression, and they're usually not tied together. They're not working synchronistically. Is that a word?
Yep.
Okay, good. I don't have to get the dictionary out. So this is how I build brands and how I recommend my clients go through that. And so next slide, Julie. This is my brand anatomy. A brand is made of 2 different parts. If we're thinking about a body as a whole, we have this outer part of our body, but then we have a lot of internal organs that help things work without even being able to see them. So the internal organs are like your brand strategy. These are the gears inside that makes everything work. And the brand expression is what the investor or our clients are going to interact with out in the real world. So instead of starting over here, is it over here or over here for people? Instead of starting over here in the visual expression side, we're going to start on the opposite side. We're going to go deepest first and start on the internal strategy. These are going to be things that come from you. They're going to be most important to you, likely. And many of these points might not actually be interactable with the investor, but they're going to drive decisions for everything else that comes thereafter. So we've probably done a few exercises before. Here's my business purpose, my mission, my values, my vision. And there's certain frameworks that can help us create these in a way that actually helps us make decisions in our business. They're not just, oh, some cool thing I'm going to put it on a plaque in our business on the wall and hope that people, see that we're honest and trustworthy and we have integrity and choose us and trust us because we say that we have these things. Doesn't necessarily work that way. That's kind of been overdone. But the internal strategy is going to be parts that you're going to use in making decisions for these other pieces. We then move into positioning strategy. This is now, how do you find a foothold and how do you stand in the industry, the marketplace, the world? So we're going to start doing the audience research here. And that's one of the hardest things I think that my clients struggle with, again, is who is my investor? Like, where are they? What do they want? Where do they work? All those types of things. Then we're also going to look at the competition. Now, the coolest thing about real estate investors is you guys have competitors, but more so you have peers and partners as well. So from the investor side, you're in competition in getting this investor in your deal and not letting Joe over here get the deal, essentially. But we also work collaboratively with each other as peers. So that's another thing that I love about this industry. It's not so cutthroat, but you do need to differentiate yourself from anyone else. And that's not only good for attracting investors, that's amazing for attracting other partners as well. So you have like 2 arenas where this can be helpful. And of course, that unique selling point, specialties, all of that falls into the positioning strategy. Once we have that, especially the audience and that competition research, we then move into character expression. I'm going to describe this a little bit deeper in other slides, because this is kind of hard to understand from just saying character expression, but it's the personality of your brand. You are your brand to a certain extent, but your brand itself can also be an entity on its own. If you plan on becoming a bigger group in the future, your level of influence, as much as this is a personal brand versus a professional brand, might vary. So overall, though, a brand needs to have a character expression, personality, a brand voice, strengths, and beliefs. And these things need to be very clear when we're communicating with investors, and they need to be consistent, most importantly. When you start getting help, VAs, other people's on your team, you cannot keep the integrity of your brand when you have dozens of other voices in the mix. If so-and-so wrote this, it feels completely different than someone else. This keeps it unified and as a working machine. So when you get more people coming in, you don't destroy what has been working before. So a lot of my clients that are like, we've grown so big, now we're hitting a ceiling. This can be one of the problems that they get. After the character expression, when we know this personality and brand voice, how much easier is it now to work on the verbal expression, creating that core message, brand story, brand words, one-liners, taglines, all of these different things. So much easier. One of the things I do want to highlight on here, though, is I put name recall, because a lot of my clients have already picked a business name when they've come to me. So now it's, does this still fit? Is it still going to work? And a lot of times we can come up with a way to tie it into the story, and it's fine. Now and then there's a case where a whole new name might be needed. And usually when we're going through the verbal expression, we can get some really good ideas that clients have loved. We didn't even mean to rename or rebrand, but they said, nope, that's it. This works perfect for us. I'll go through the work and changing all the LLC and all these other docs. It's worth it to me now. Or you can do a DBA as well. After that, now we can create the website visuals. We can pick our fonts, our colors, our logo, and create our social presence. And it's so much easier. And when we're trying to decide, do I choose this font or this font for my logo? We look back, which one best which one best shows this character? Fonts have different styles to them. They feel different. This serif feels better than the sans serif because of our strategy. Our investor's going to like this better because we understand this about them. So making decisions from here becomes so much easier. And you don't have to go back and redo it because it was chosen with strategy, not just, I think it looked better. Oh, wait, I saw something else I think looks better. Now I want to redo it, because that's a never ending cycle. As a designer, I'm not allowed to retouch my own stuff. I always have a new idea, something else I want to do. I was like, no, that's okay. I'll save that for a different client project. This isn't mine, but I love it. So we got to take some of the personal preference out of these decisions. However, when I create a brand for a client, I want them to love it, but I want their investor to love it more, honestly. So that's the goal. Next slide, Julie. I think there's a little bit of white covering on my other stuff that might have come through. There we go.
There we go.
So I want to go through this flow chart. It'll come back. There it is. I want to go through this flow chart with you guys. And I don't think I can see everyone's screen as I'm presenting. Is there a way I can change that, Julie? Maybe not.
Like to see all the participants?
Yeah.
Click on where you do see the participants, and then there will be a grid box, and you can choose, how many people that you can see. Since we do have a number of people, you're going to have to scroll through to see.
Okay. I'll keep scrolling through. That's totally fine. Let me put everybody back at top. Thank you.
You go to the top right, there's a view thing, and you can make sure you're not in full screen.
Okay. There's side by side gallery, side by side speaker. Okay.
Side by side gallery, and then you can grab the little gray bar there and drag them over, and you can see everybody.
Gray bar.
Kind of in the
that's true. Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm seeing the, oh, wait. No, I'm not seeing the gray bar.
All
Like
right.
the bottom corner, you can kind of pull it out.
Okay. Okay. That's better. I don't think I got it as big as it can go. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. Love it. Thank you guys. So as far as figuring out what's slowing our growth, okay, I need marketing, I need branding. Instead of starting over from scratch, it sometimes is helpful to find out, okay, what is holding me back the most? Let's work on that. Let's reassess after we've worked on that and keep working on pieces. So I use this flow chart to kind of help assess with people where they're at. Can we do like a raise of hands of who has a website right now? DIY. Okay, about half, majority or so. How many of those websites are getting at least 2 people of traffic a month? Okay, somewhere in there. Essentially, if you have a website and you're getting traffic, likely you have an area that you can focus in on your branding. Now, if you're not getting enough traffic, that is the only pathway where you should then work on your marketing. If everything else is situated and working good, then all you can do is jump back into marketing and dial it up. But let's say you are getting website traffic. Are you getting the right kind of clients and investors? Does anyone feel like they're getting the right kind of people to their website? Not quite. Okay. Meh. Okay. So if you're not, then we can work on branding. So for most of you guys, we're going to stop right there. We're going to work on getting the right type of people and investors to your website. If you were getting some, okay, we'll take Julie. We'll keep going through with you, Julie. So Julie's getting investors and she's getting the right kind of investors. Are they investing and working with you to an extent? You're getting people investing and working with you. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Have you hit an income ceiling or would like to make your marketing like less expensive? Do you want to dial this up?
Yes.
Where'd you go?
Definitely
Yes.
more.
Okay. I don't think anyone would want to say no to that, essentially. If Julie was getting all the investors she could possibly have, essentially, or she was doing everything right, which, man, Julie's doing so many things. To break down Julie's branding and everything she's doing, she is a rock star with content and connections. Holy cow. So I would say for Julie, though, like, great job. Keep doing what you're doing and just continue dialing it up and refining it as you go, essentially. So I'd recommend to anyone who has a website, who's getting some type of traffic and it seems to be working, let's do some marketing and get more in. If you feel like they're dropping off or it's not connecting at any point, or you need to build some more brand trust, then let's focus in on some branding and figure out, I do branding assessments for people and audits, and then we'll go through that and find where can we leverage and get the work going, where it's going to help you without having to do as much time or investment, depending on where you're at. So if you guys want to screenshot this, but also I'll have a way that you can do a QR code and get all the slides at the end too. If you want to do the next slide, Julie. As we've kind of already noticed that finding investors, creating our ideal client, avatar, who we're talking to is one of the biggest struggles, but that's the most destructive problem on an investor's website is that they have an underdeveloped avatar. A lot of people who are taking marketing courses, even, they're focusing a lot on demographics and they're missing psychographics. You've probably heard both the words and you're like, yeah, I did some psychographics, but they're not going as deep as they can go. And if you want to do the next slide, Julie, I want to describe what each is just so that we can make sure we're clear. The demographic is the quantitative, the like external data. These are the things that are easier to obtain, but it is age, gender, location, marriage, their health, whether they're a parent. Some of those like marketing surveys they'll have you is like, what car do they drive? What is their activities? What is their lifestyle? These are all demographics. They can be found out easily doing surveys. And then sometimes when like the website cookies and things like that can find out data like this as well. But psychographics are those qualitative, internal psychology aspects. They're way more effective, but they're also harder to get out of an investor. But these are things like values, needs, wants, concerns, hesitations, fears, desires, but identity. This is one that's usually missing from most marketers' lists is this identity aspect. Who is it that they see themselves as? Who is it that they want to become? Identity is the strongest leveraged psychographic when people are creating like commercials. They show this guy hiking through the woods. He pulls out his Gerber. He does magical, amazing hero like things. And some guy is like, that's me. That's who I want to be. I'm going to get a Gerber. Even if it sits in my truck and I live in the middle of Denver, I'm that guy. So it talked to your identity of who you wanted to become, who you saw yourself as, what life experience you wanted to have. So I put thoughts at the end because, of course, psychographics are what we're thinking. When we survey people, depending on how comfortable they are with us, they'll tell us, like you guys told me, some things about your business and what you want to work on. But getting some of these really deep values and needs can take a relationship of trust to get out of. So when you're having these investor and capital calls, things like that, it's really good to build up that relationship where you can ask a little bit deeper and deeper questions. Some of my clients are kind of shocked, but one of my questions is, what do you think life is about? It gets them to open up. They go on the swim. Cody's over there smiling. He knows what that feels like. And Julie too. But it helps people open up. And I would recommend using that question when you're talking to investors. What do you think life is about? Because they're going to start telling you, instead of, I need this money so we can, retire my wife, or I want to send the kids to school, or so we can do more investments. But it's like, what is it they want to get out of that? It's not the money. It's not necessarily the time freedom. It goes so much more deeper of what they're trying to get out of it. But one of the other most important things is that the words they use in their head are not necessarily the ones that they've filtered and are telling you in person. They might be a little bit more candid, a little bit more raw. And when we can divulge what they're telling themselves in their head and use that same language, it's like, holy crap, she read my brain, literally. How I just spoke right there, like that's not how I usually speak when I'm giving a presentation, but in my head, I'm thinking, oh crap, that sucks. Oh, I'm so stupid, or this is driving me crazy. Like different phrases like that aren't necessarily ones I would use in conversation with someone I don't really know. So when we can get into those little nuances of language and their thoughts, and the identity that they connect to, we're leveraging psychographics like no other marketer or our peers and competitors are. And especially when we know who it is that we want to talk to, your psychographics and how you use them will be completely different than your peers or competitors next to you, because they're talking to a different person. That's one way to easily differentiate as well. But Julie, next slide. The psychographics are very hard, like we said, to understand. What words are they using? What are their core desires? And if we don't have a lot of experience with our investors, like, oh, I haven't had 50 of my ideal investors to work with, I haven't heard all of them speak, so I don't really know what they're using for words. This framework is one of the best frameworks for building branding around. And this is the Archetypes, and it was introduced by Swiss psychologist Carl Jung. And he didn't create this. He actually discovered this. He studied all of the ways that we tell stories, even back to like African tribes, Native American folklore. And there are running themes. I think it was early 1800s, 1900s when he discovered this. But there are themes of different personalities that always show up, and that as we identify as. Now, we're multifaceted human beings. We're not only one thing. But in certain realms or arenas, we're going to be a certain person. In the pursuit of our goals, we see ourselves as someone, and we're looking for a particular type of person to help us get there. So yes, we're going to share the recording after. We're going to have it all recorded, and you can access the slides too, because I know there's a lot of information in here. So as far as the archetypes, these are universal models of people and behaviors. And so this helps us just hack into some psychographics really quickly. And I can explain a little bit more about how your brand archetype might be the same or actually different from your investor's archetype as well. But Julie, if you want to show the next slide. The most helpful book to understand how to use these archetypes in branding is The Hero and the Outlaw, Building Extraordinary Brands Through the Power of Archetypes. And so that's the book cover. Inside the book, it breaks down how each of these archetypes feels psychographically and how to use it in branding and business. And so I grabbed one to give an example of. If you want to go to the next slide, Julie. I grabbed the Outlaw. And if you want to, there you go. The Outlaw is a pretty fun one. It's not one that's used that commonly in the real estate investing industry, but it really does kind of tie to the forgetting traditional investments. So there's a little bit of underlying outlaw and kind of what we're doing here. But the Outlaw, it's a little bit small for me, but if we can zoom in, Julie, can you read off what it says in the upper left-hand corner for their drive and the fears?
Let's see. Drive is liberation, change, righteousness, revenge, and independence. And the fears are servitude, conformity, complacency, acceptance, and dependence.
Okay. So if through our framework in the questionnaire and our work together, we find that your investor has this outlaw in them, and you can also tell by maybe they're attracted to other outlaw brands, if they have a Harley, if they love Apple products, like you can kind of find, yeah, they're already attracted to this type of brand persona as well. But these are frameworks. So now we know drive might be liberation and change. We don't have to use those exact words, but we can use words and stories that talk about being liberated from the 9-to-5, being liberated from traditional stock markets. And it's really going to resonate with them if they are an outlaw archetype, essentially. So on the bottom left, we have like other goals that they have, greater fears. The strategy of the brand then would be to disrupt, maybe not destroy, but shock. We're going to use a little bit more rough, raw, kind of shocking type things in our language, in our visuals, but we're also going to describe who they are. And it might not be the outlaw where it's someone who's breaking the law we might see, but it might be a rebel, a revolutionary, a maverick, a reformer. That might be who you are, or your investor within your brand, a misfit. They're going to find something in here where they're like, that's me. I connect with that. And when you guys download this slide, I would really recommend reading. This is a Harley Davidson ad, actually. I think it was in a magazine that I had found and clipped it. It's actually amazingly tied, I think, to language that you could use as a real estate investor if you had that outlaw brand. So we're talking about like the other street versus Wall Street, money and currency, but you know, the American standard and hard work. Like this is a brand message that goes beyond motorcycle. I think the only thing that speaks to motorcycle is metal is their currency, but it's just speaking to this person's identity, not to buy a bike and do a motorcycle. They're talking about road and metal. That's the only thing that ties to motorcycle. This message is speaking directly to someone's psychographic. So that's a really good example if you want to read back onto that one. But Julie, next slide.
You know, can I interject a question?
Of course.
Nathaniel is wondering, and I took the liberty of answering this question. He's like, do we try to appeal to all personas or should we focus on a few? And I'm like,
yes.
No.
Okay.
So that's good. And then how do you decide which persona to focus on?
Okay, perfect. Can you go back to slide 10? When I work with my clients, we're going to focus on 1 or 2 personas. I like no more, never anymore. What I like to do is create a hybrid of a persona because we can customize it to your ideal avatar, essentially. Let's use Julie as an example, actually. I'm going to volunteer her when she can find slide 10. So
that comes up as slide 10 on my side.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. That's so weird. After demographics and psychographics, the one with the wheel and all the characters.
Okay, perfect. There we go.
So in here, we're going to do a mix. Well, what I do with my clients, I should have included maybe some examples from a client. I can do a follow-up video maybe on this, since this is, so interesting. We want to figure out who the investor is first. So we're going to I ask you a series of questions, and that helps us understand. We're like, what is their strongest fear? And I'll give you a list of all the fears. And then what is their strongest desire? And then we find consistency throughout those answers to help us hone in on which personality type they are. Now, they can also be a hybrid of 2. So for Julie's example, do you remember what Ryan is?
Oh, I remember this. I remember this really well. He was a mix. My avatar, and by the way, I have pages written about him based off of going through this.
Ryan is her avatar. She made him up. She knows him very intimately. So that's why I said Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ryan Stark. He is an outlaw. He's a bit of an explorer and an outlaw, and he does have some hero in him. And so when we went through that exercise, and the exercise is so powerful, you guys drop in the comments if you think we should try to rally and get Monica to just do that exercise with a group sometime.
That would be fun.
I mean, you asked me those different questions, and it was like sheets of questions that really, it was almost like showed us exactly what he was in the order, and kind of, he's mostly a hero, but then he has his outlaw in him.
Right, exactly. So what we know from that then, when we answer those questions, we're going to hone in on 2 areas to express through the brand. Again, when we do too many things, we kind of lose. We need to create a very specific brand message so that it's more memorable. When we're talking about whole different things and we're using all these different words, we don't have consistency, then it's not very memorable and it's not clear. So for example, my brand is a mix between the creator and the magician. Now, Julie spent a lot of time with me, but you'll also notice from one of my other slides, I use the word magic. The magic of branding, because it's kind of this ethereal thing that works or doesn't. It's magic. It takes some things like you need to hire a magician to do over your website. I use those words frequently, but if you rewatch the replay, Julie said something about the magic of when she was describing me. And I did not tell her to do that.
You've never
she's
told
with
me
me
that.
a lot.
That's funny.
She's probably heard me use the words a lot, but that's what's retained in her memory about what it is I do and how to explain what I do to others. We're going to talk about reputation here in some following slides. Now, the one thing though is when we pick who we're speaking to, Julie really resonates with Ryan because she's also an explorer as a person. So we're going to find commonality in that ground, and that's likely a great decision why we're going to then prioritize the explorer archetype. When you go to her website, visuals, you'll see that in the visuals, but you'll also see it in her language. She talks about how adventure should stay on the trail, not in your finances. Guess where that stuff comes from? Creating your character development and doing your verbal expression and creating a strong brand. It's creative. It's different from what anyone else is saying. Now, if she's talking to a room of doctors, that might land with like 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 of them if they happen to be a hiker doctor as well. But she knows who Ryan is. She knows who our audience is. He is outdoorsy. He's going to resonate with that. I was having a conversation with another gentleman who I was on his podcast. He was very successful in the investor arena. And he said, as soon as I started sharing my mountain biking and my Jeeping stuff, there were people who were leaving, reinvesting other deals and just investing with me just solely on the fact that they like that stuff too. They did not know how to decide which deal is better, who to trust, who to work with. But they're like, oh, this guy gets me and he is like me, so I'm going to invest with him. So it's these personal points. Now, Julie can be a lot of other things. She's also a mom. She's also this. What points of those connect with this person? What facets of her are going to help create this character for her brand, who she is? So it is a little bit of both. Who the investor is and who you are, and then where is this overlap? And we pick a strategy based off that. I could do, okay, so end here, we'll start another workshop maybe at that point. But this is all about perception. So Julie, if you want to go to the slide with Elon Musk on it, I don't know if our numbers align.
I will.
After
And
outlaw identity.
as it's going there, I'd also like to add that initially 2 years ago, you and I rebranded my website from its initial website that somebody else did. We rebranded it and I felt like, oh my gosh, this website is so great. And then a year later, we did a quote refresh. I'm like, okay, I'm further along in my investing. I know who I could see who's resonating with me. And I really want to like speak to that more. And we really dove into this. And that's when we started adding all these, Monica went through and just took the heart of Ryan Stark and put it into the website. And it doesn't distract from other people, just to be clear.
Right.
Like I still get a lot of different investors, but it definitely resonates. And I have investors that see there are all these subconscious things there, with mountain biking and just different things in the background that show up, that it's just present. It's amazing.
And why it works is because we didn't focus on demographics. We focused on a psychographic. What does let's say like a college graduate, Caucasian woman who's blonde, 23, lives in Arizona, what does she have in common with a 55-year-old African-American male in New York City? They both maybe are struggling in their career decision. Maybe they're both struggling with fatigue of their work, somewhere along those lines. Maybe they both need a career coach. But if you focused on demographic only, you're going to exclude the guy up in New York, or you're going to exclude the woman down in Arizona. That's why psychographics work and are so much more effective, essentially. Because it's like, even though I focused in on this area, it talks to these two completely different types of people because this is their same human experience and goals, essentially. So when we're talking about all these pieces, the character expression, the visuals, and our strategy, what we're doing is creating a perception. And Elon Musk said that a brand is just perception, and perception will match reality over time. So when my clients come to me, essentially, they're like, I'm just starting, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to build this. What we need to do is build that trust and credibility so that they can grow to that next level. And like Julie said, when we get more clarity, when our business strategy or what we're doing in our business even shifts, then we can make those changes to that brand shift, but we still have the character, we still have the strategy. It's just, oh, I'm going to change this language. I'm going to add this page on this other service or whatever it is that I'm doing. And then that is essentially going to create that reality in your business over time. But how we create perception, if you want to go to the next slide, Julie, this is one of my brand philosophies, essentially, is that a strong brand is red. So how do we create brand perception? And that is with RED, and that's reputation, experience, and distinction. The reputation part of that is what's focused on you. This is the you part. So your reputation is then made into an entity and a sought after commodity. What are you known for is part of your brand. You're in your brand. You should be in your brand. That's going to build trust. But then the experience part of your brand, you're creating an experience for your investor at every single touch point, your website being one of them, interactions with them, emails to them, social media channels. When they're going through your process from their first call with you to how they're presented to the deal, all of these things is the experience. And we need to be very intentional about creating that experience so that it creates a desire to return. This is how we get referrals even better. They want to come and bring all their friends. And there was a statistic I don't have in front of me right now where they studied why people choose brands. And it was in the last couple of years, and people are shifting statistically to choosing brands based off of experience, not just the benefits and the features. It's like, I like experiencing this brand. I like going in the store. That's why I choose them. Then distinction. Again, we talked about this a little bit with the brand anatomy, but the final piece of branding is the position you hold in the industry and what makes you distinguishable, how that makes you different. It can be a simple thing based on like color. It can be something as complex as a completely different service offering. But essentially, there's 3 areas of creating that brand perception. So I'm going to break them down a little bit deeper in these next slides, and I might have to go a little fast. Reputation, again, screenshot these slides, or please, let's do the QR code at the end and you can get all the slides or watch the replay. An example of building reputation is using body language and expression in the video or videography for your website, for example. What photos do you use for your social media channels? All of those things. You're expressing so much through body language. Our body language says more than our words ever can. And so I want to hone in real quick on one example of this: caring and close. If you want to show that you're caring in your brand, on the left is a woman who's talking to another woman who's breastfeeding. This is a lactation consultant client that I had. This was intentional. In her photo shoot strategy, we talked about body language, and that was intentional. This next photo is of the gentleman all in black is my client. This is at an event that they held. And so there's a photographer there getting hundreds of photos, but I chose this photo for his website because naturally he's expressing a part of the brand that's the most important part of what distinguishes them. They know all their investors in person, and they host live events for them, and they truly care and want to have lifetime relationships and mentorships. That's why I chose this photo. It was natural, but I would have told him to almost do this body language wise, like get in close, show you're close with these people, that you know these people. So there's different aspects of this. That's why we do photo shoot strategies before you do your photo shoot. After the brand strategy, so don't go do a photo shoot and then try to do a brand strategy. We're likely going to want to change some things. And then intentional brand words. We talked about how I use the word magic, how I use the word incomparable. I have a set of brand words that I use as frequently as possible, as long as they're appropriate. I will write an entire client's website and go back to the brand words list 3 different times to interject these as much as possible without being so redundant. Someone's like, this is driving me crazy. You're like keyword stuffing, but so that they can create this perception. And then, oh, this brand was memorable because it made me up the ante. Not everyone says that. They say next level or whatever. Like, no, up the ante is what I think of with this client, those types of things. So reputation, again, I'm talking about visuals and verbal because these are the first things that we experience in a brand, but we can go all the way down to building more reputation in other areas as well. Experience, I'm going to just do really fast because I want you to be creative with experience and look at how is it to do the first call with them? How is it? What do they experience when they go on the website? When we do experience though, it's really, there's these 3 areas that are just really important that when we're creating a strategy around experience. And the first is that we need to make it easy. If it's not easy for the investor, I wish this slide was easy. Is it up, Julie, or is it just me? I only see reputation.
Coming.
Okay, it's coming, but it's really important no matter what we do in a client's experience. The number one most important thing is making it easy. The more complicated it is, the more stressed out, the more likely they're going to drop off. Drop off rates, everything. So focus on that first, then make it enjoyable. If it's a pleasant experience, no matter what it is that you want them to accomplish or go through, so much better. And then again, that differentiation, just do something unexpected. Throw something in there, have a little bit of fun, be kind of personal. And if it's not expected, it's going to make a lasting impression on them. So those are just my 3 points on that differentiation. Oh man, I love talking about this example. I use Cirque du Soleil as one of the best examples of how to differentiate. It's just the most simple and clear. Is anyone familiar with Cirque du Soleil? Okay, pretty familiar. They're big. When we look at building a differentiation strategy, what we would do, like we're branding for Cirque du Soleil, we're going to look at most circuses. Now, most circuses, those are the gray bars here. And I'm sorry, we lost my animations. We were going to do just the gray bars first. All other circuses have a very low ticket price. Their music's about the same. We all know the tune. Da, 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 da. Like it's the same thing. Costumes about the same, right? Like, okay, there's the big feathered hats. Everyone's in bright colors. The stage scene, we're in a red and white striped tent. It's sand arena, same area. And then they all usually have animals. And animals are one of the most loved experiences that people want to go see at a circus show, actually, is the animals. But what happened with Cirque du Soleil, they did the opposite of everything. Now, to differentiate yourself, you only really need to do the opposite in one area, maybe 2, and you can stand out in your industry massively. But what Cirque du Soleil said, no, we're going to do high price tickets. We're going to have custom music for each individual show, and there's going to be a live orchestra playing it there. We're going to even sell CDs of the music. It's going to be that good. The costumes, we're going to create different worlds with our stage setting and our costumes. And we're not going to have animals at all. Even though they're one of the most loved things in the circus, we don't even need that. That's okay. So they did the opposite of a circus, and that is why they're so wildly popular. I am probably their ideal fan. I had written an identity for myself after the first show I've ever experienced person. I said, this is something I want to see every single year. It made such an emotional impact on me. I said, I'm the type of person who wants to see a Cirque du Soleil show every year, like lasting fan. I'm sitting here talking about them right now. I'm marketing for them. Like that's how much I love them. And I'm a fan. I will go see anything they ever make. It's amazing. And that's essentially what you want to do in your differentiation strategies. Create something that has that effect on someone where they will choose you time and time again, and you're going to stand out compared to anyone else. Now, to make this a little, since we're going to focus on examples a little bit more than Q&A at the end, how to do this for real estate investing though. So with the research part, when we're doing that positioning strategy with my clients, we're going to make a lot of graphs, and some of them might be based on things that we can see. What colors are on the website? Do they have video on the website? What are their offerings? How do they talk about this? Do they have a podcast? Do they not? Like there's a huge checklist that we can do to compare and see what are the majority of my competition doing and my peers doing, the people I admire most. What are they doing? And now sometimes they're doing something that's working. We don't necessarily want to do the opposite of that. We can use that. But then there's other areas where it's like, I can do this completely differently. And I'm going to talk about that on one of our end slides here. Actually, yeah, maybe like 3 or 4 more slides. Areas where you can differentiate yourself from the majority of real estate investors' websites right away. I've already looked at over 200 of them. Every single time I have a client, we redo the whole competition strategy and the research. And actually, there's some common sites that you guys are using over and over again. I'm like, I know them very well. Okay, we got it. We can be different and better than them in your own way, essentially. So other areas is not just the physical stuff. We make other graphs when we're talking about the presentation and the reputation. So are they feminine or masculine? Are they soft? Or are they like hard and bold? We'll do more scales of this as well and find where all the competitors are. And if you look at more than 5 real estate investor sites, you're going to find they fall on the professional, traditional side. They're over here. They're not that personal. They're not this. It's really easy to make those over and over again. And then you can find all these areas where you can branch out and differentiate yourself. Maybe you want to be more modern and contemporary. Maybe you want to be a little bit more feminine, especially for the women who are investors. That's a very easy way to differentiate yourself. There's a lot of other scales that we go through when we establish and go through that strategy of the character and the positioning strategy too. How do you want to stand out and be different from those? So it's not just the actual physical elements like I'm using in the Cirque du Soleil example. It can be very much like in the design, in the strategy, in the language as well, if that makes sense. I wish I had more examples on this. I love doing this one. So this is the other destructive problem, is that these websites and our brands are not differentiated enough. This industry is filled with what I like to call brand clones. You've seen 10 websites, they all kind of start to look the same and they've got the same things in the same place and everything. And there's a reason for that. Like it works to a certain extent and it has worked. But in the past decade, our marketing has changed a lot from being feature and benefit focused to being experience and identity focused, where people want more humanistic brands. And the fastest way is to, I'm sorry, I'm reading the comment. That's a really good question, Nathaniel. I'm going to get to that one in a second. But one of the ways that we're going to build trust is by letting them see us and trust us as a person, not just a logo. People don't trust logos anymore, the big company high rise, but that's where we grew up with. That's what we're seeing in some of these really big companies and their success. We feel like that's what we need to do. So that's where we kind of go through and kind of do a little bit of brand coaching with my clients. So Nathaniel asked, can we be differentiated too much? My short answer would essentially be no, but this can go wrong if you're doing it just for the sake of being different and it's not going to connect with an investor. So it's like, go for it and be as crazy different as you want. But if you're being so crazy different to the point where like you're like turning people off and scaring investors away, then I would say no. So again, understanding their psychographic, understanding who they are, is going to help make those decisions. So like I could be different by every time I meet a client, I throw a pie in their face. I don't think they're going to like that. So they will remember me. They might talk to me about their friends, but not in a good way. So there is a differentiated too, well, no, there is no differentiated too much. It's just that if you're doing no longer resonates, thank you. Resonates with who you're talking to and who your investor is. Okay, next slide, Julie. Let's talk about some specific examples. Again, after reviewing almost 200 websites, I found a pretty short, medium long list of things that you can do immediately that don't cost a lot of money or time, that you can do to your website and make it different from the 90% majority of real estate investor websites out there. So if you want to go to the next slide, some of the basic things are a brand photo shoot. Even highly, highly successful companies might only have like 1 or 2 brand photo shoots, photos on their website. So having your own brand photo shoot immediately is going to help you stand out from your industry. Now, I think we've all seen the in the suit jacket, arms crossed pose, like headshots. I don't really recommend those. Maybe the guys are like lined up and there's a city skyline behind them. When we rely on a photographer just to like, I need photos for my company, take photos. This is what they're going to do. And it's not because they're a bad photographer. It's that we haven't given them like a strategy. We haven't given them goals. We want to communicate this emotion that we are this type of person and we're for this and we do this. When we give that to a photographer, their creativity is used in a way that's actually going to help our business instead of make us look like everyone else. And it's not really their fault. It's not their intention, but we really need to help them. So brand or a photo shoot strategy is something that we do within the branding. So it's like, here's what we have to work with. And then hopefully your photographer can make that happen. Branding photo shoots, highly important. Video. There is hardly any websites that are using video, whether having a company intro video or even video banners on their websites. I don't know why. Everyone in marketing is screaming, we're going to video, stop writing. No one wants to read. Everyone wants video. But then I'm going through these sites, I'm like, there's no video. So please make a video. It doesn't even have to be the most professionally produced. If they see your face, even in a photo, if they hear your voice, this is an amazing point to build brand trust with. So this is the reason why I use Brand Anatomy podcast in my business. It is a way for people to listen to me without having to attend a workshop. They can hear me teach them something and say, hey, yeah, she's a good fit for me. I don't use it as lead gen. I use it as when I have leads and contacts coming to me, making sure they're the right fit. Do they want to go as deep as I go? I'm not just making some pretty website handing off, like, we're going to do some work. Are you ready for it? And I need to make sure that they understand that and actually want that. Then we know we're a fit. So even audio, they can hear you if they can see something. There are a few companies where they have lots of team members and they will still even use voiceovers or voice talents. And that's okay too. There's someone talking to them in the language that we want to use and addressing their concerns. And so that is going to help your website massively increase conversions. Okay, so I'm not recommending that you do all of these. One way to stand apart, if you want to, is to create a logo that doesn't include a building in it. This is the industry. This is what you do. And it's not that I don't recommend using a building, but 98% of logos for real estate investment companies have some shape of a building in it. And that's okay, because that's what you do. It helps communicate that. But does that match your brand strategy when you have it? If you want to differentiate yourself, create a logo without a building and you will be different right away. Makes it that easy. Julie herself, she didn't have a logo like that when we first started working together. And I remember you asking me, do I need to change my logo? And I said, hold on, wait. Let's see if we need to change it. When we did the brand work together, one of the biggest aspects she wanted to communicate was essentially this freedom and liberation aspect of what the real estate investments do. So instead of just saying what we are investing in real estate, here's a building. It's we are liberating you from this and this. So she has her birdcage for her logo. It doesn't necessarily communicate 3 Keys investments, but it communicates the what, and it creates an emotional experience. Like, yes, I feel like that bird in a birdcage. I want out. I want to have adventure. I want to have freedom. And so that's what hers does. So I recommended to her at the time, no, let's not change it. So here's one other thing too. I don't want to branch off too far, is when you're rebranding something, if you change everything and no one can recognize you anymore, sometimes that's more difficult and you have to go back and rebuild things that you've already built. So when we look at a brand, it's like, okay, we're going to make little adjustments here, but we're not going to make them everywhere. If you used a logo and a brand and a company name, you've built up a huge reputation around it, we're going to work with it. We're not going to redo it the majority of the time. But again, that's all dependent on you guys. In the first few years, it's awesome. We can shift if we need to, and we're not going to have any penalties essentially for doing those changes. Another thing we talked about a little bit earlier is intellectual property, having your own intellectual property. These can be things like acronyms. My branding is RED, R-E-D, my brand anatomy layout there. I also have a brand trust pyramid. That's not in this presentation, but if you go to my website, you can download it. Those things I've created are essentially maybe something you can find somewhere else. Like, it's not put in this way, but it's like, yeah, a brand is reputation, experience, distinction. You're going to find those little pieces everywhere when you learn about branding, but I've created something that is my own and you're not going to find anywhere else. So if you guys can do that with what you're teaching about real estate investing, just your own framework, and give it a cute name, do an acronym where it spells out something. These are the things that are going to help people recall you. And it's very important to have. So people also create books or podcasts. All of these are intellectual property, something you've created and you own, and it builds up that reputation. A lot of people don't have these on their websites. They have an email, like an opt-in book or workbook PDF. That's one small piece. But when we look at differentiating our websites, what else can we do or create that's going to be different than the majority? So another example, if we're talking about just colors on their own, most colors in these websites are blues, grays, maybe browns, neutrals, whites, very traditional. You guys are laughing over there. I see it. So very traditional, right? And that's because we want to build trust. If we know anything about color psychology, we would just pick blue. Blue needs to be in our color because it builds trust. But when we don't have another strategy and a whole other character and personality, when we don't have that, that's why people are making these same choices. Oh, understand color psychology, black and blue. That's it. That's gonna give us success. Now I got a bunch of black and blue websites in front of me, and I can't remember which one was yours. So bright colors are reversing color palette. One of my mid-tier clients I just finished, I wish I could, I should have included an image. Their website isn't live yet. There's no white background. The entire thing is black, different shades of black with a gold accent. They're my first client to ever take me up on doing like an all black website. They're like, this is us. This is our character. So just being completely opposite is going to make you that much more memorable. Consistent brand words. We talked about that again. What are they going to remember about you? You tell them what they're going to remember about you. When you've made it that simple and you've repeated it enough, they can actually recall it to themselves and to other people. So picking even 4 or 5 words that you want to use consistently when you're talking about your business, LinkedIn bio, to your social media post, to your website, to the first investor call, that's what they're going to recall. So that's very important. And then, okay, another example that I don't necessarily recommend, and depends on your strategy, but if you're only looking for ways to differentiate yourself, creating a business name that doesn't have the word investments or capital in it. And I know that's very difficult to do, and it's okay that it's there, but Julie and Cody, and I wish I had another client in here to talk about this a little bit, but essentially, what does that say? What is your ultimate goal of your brand? And that is essentially to attract investors of a personal nature. You're not attracting groups. Maybe if you're going after groups to invest with you, then I think capital would be a great way to use that word. If you're looking for like this man with a family who's working this job and he wants a different way to make money on the side, I don't know if capital is going to resonate with him, or he's going to understand what that means, or he's going to feel like, oh, I'm just this guy's piggy bank. That's what he wants me for, is my money. So what is it that we're communicating? But to differentiate yourself, if you can come up with a company name that doesn't have either just investments or capital, another way to say it, huge differentiation. So it might take some creativity. But like, for example, one of my clients, we used investors. So we're creating an identity for them. They were realm investors. So instead of realm investment or realm venture group, which is what they had before, it's like, no, realm investors. Now, these are people who are investing in different realms of life or create a new realm for themselves. So Julie, with her podcast used to be Ask Me How I Know. Now it is The Conscious Investor. She has created an identity of someone who they want to be, and it ties very much into what she does. She has so much in coaching and mindset, as well as investments, that it created this blend, and now she has a new identity that really resonates with people. So advanced, I'm going to skim over these just a little bit faster. Speaking at other events or podcasts that are not in the multifamily space. If you're creating a podcast or you want to be on other people's podcasts, getting some movement in speaking in other podcasts that are about real estate can be great. But what you're likely going to find is a lot of your peers on those types of ones. Unless, like how Julie's rebranded her podcast now, she's speaking directly to Ryan, who's he's in marketing in Denver. Her avatar isn't already in real estate. So she's going to be talking about things directly to him. So that is going to be who her audience is. So being on her podcast might be more valuable than being on any other investor's podcast that's telling you how to syndicate, how to find a deal. Because an investor doesn't need a deal. You're bringing me the deal. Just tell me what else I need to know. How do I save up the money? How do I invest the money in the deal? So I cannot not explain in depth. I'm trying not to. So anyways, I'm glad you guys wanted the examples more than maybe a little bit of Q&A at the end. Go in front of other people. Do your investors own boats? Get on some boat podcasts. And there's got to be something out there. Get out on podcasts. If now we're focusing on demographics, maybe a little bit, if they are doctors, what podcasts do doctors listen to? Do you guys remember my questions I asked you? I asked you what podcasts do you listen to? When I go to speak on other people's podcasts, I want to know what podcasts do you listen to? You can ask your investors that and then get on those podcasts. So I listen to this family podcast, or I listen to this financial advisor podcast, whatever it is, try to get onto those. Being featured in media is going to help differentiate you and build you that credibility on your website. The advanced way of differentiating yourself is having a fully developed brand strategy. That's going to help a lot. But also, here's something that isn't a good fit for everyone, but if you can supply any other type of need or service, another need that your ideal investor has, and be a specialist or provide something else they need, you're going to stand apart from anyone else essentially in the industry. So it could be a micro course on maybe personal finance first. You can't invest in big investments usually till you get your personal finances in order, or when you have those in order, you might be able to invest in more. Even if this isn't your forte, bringing someone else in, teaching you reteach it, whatever it is, there's a lot of other areas that you might be able to serve them. So like with Julie, for example, she is amazing, like business mindset coaching, like phenomenal. She's offering something that Ryan and his family might essentially need, especially when it comes to doing really big investments. If we're getting hung up and our fears are getting in our own way, she can essentially help that. And she's building a relationship with them, serves her business exponentially. And she's different from any other real estate investor because she's also a coach in this way. She also has a podcast in this way. I'm sorry, I keep using you as an example, Julie. You're here. Is that okay?
No, it's totally fine.
Awesome. Good. So those are just some ways directly, very easily, that you can quickly differentiate yourself in your industry, but on your website. I recommend, again, video photo shoot immediately, and then start working on your own IP, maybe like putting a pop of some other color in there, doing something a little different, and you can make your website differentiated very quickly with those areas. Next slide, Julie.
Okay. And everybody just do the photo shoot. Okay. It's just, that was the best.
Please,
like, I think
for your brand, for your branding person too, please do the photo shoot.
It's like
it makes and
$300
breaks
or
the
something.
project.
I don't know, $300-400. I had an amazing photographer come on my property, and we did this whole photo shoot, and I just gave all those assets to Monica, but you actually directed even the photographer. You're like, okay, I need these type of shots. And so there's communication
people
there.
do photo shoots and I can't use them because they cropped a head off. They're all vertical. I need horizontal. They're too close. When we put them on a website banner, and I'm like, your face is way too big. I don't think we want to get that close to you. So yeah, we need to help them because they don't know. Absolutely.
Yeah. And on that, just working with you, Monica, that allowed me to have confidence in, okay, I'm going to pay this much money. I'm going to get these, digital assets, and that's going to support you. And even having poses where I know there's one on the website where it's my husband and I. Well, that resonates with Ryan. Ryan wants deep connection with his family. So it made sense for me to have pictures of my husband and I and my whole family and the dog and all of that, because that speaks Ryan's language. So throwing that in there.
Yeah. Tiffany just asked real quick too, does your website need to be mobile compatible? 100%. It's either somewhere between 40 and 60% are coming over on mobile. Probably the majority are always going to be on mobile, and that first point of contact. Maybe then, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go through this person's website. Might do that at computer, but your first impression might likely be on a mobile. So I definitely address that with my clients when we're building the website. I use Wix for my clients' websites because I can control the mobile version. I can completely redesign a different mobile version entirely. We could have it say different things. We could have different paragraphs. It could be shortened. It could be in completely different order. We could do less testimonials or more photos or less. So we completely customize the mobile version as well. So before we recap everything that we learned and try to maybe answer some of these other questions, I would like a raise of hands to see if this helped you understand branding better, or maybe you guys are more advanced than I expected. Does this help you understand branding better? Okay, we got 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then who feels like they have clarity on at least one area of focus that would create huge results like in their business? Do you have an area or two that you feel strongly about? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I would definitely want to make sure that you guys feel like you have an area that you can focus in on. So if you guys feel like, okay, that was a lot, I'm still not really sure, you can schedule a 15-minute call with me over on my website and we can kind of look over, okay, let's do the flow chart again together. Let's kind of talk about what we're struggling with, just so I can help you know what should we focus on first, essentially. But I'm so glad to do this. And Julie, can we just give Julie a round of applause really quick? She's helpful. She's my slide girl, but she's absolutely the best host. In exchange for the value today, would you guys mind giving me a little bit of feedback? It's going to take about a minute, and I would love to do that now so I can drink some water for a second. It'll help me improve workshops in the future. And when you do this QR code and answer, I think it's like 3 or 4 questions for me, then you'll get the instant download to all the slides and stuff too. So that would be great. If you wouldn't mind doing that now for a second. Do we want to hang out an extra 10, 15 minutes for more Q&A? Do you think do you have that time, Julie? Does anyone want to do that?
You know what? I actually have a hard stop at,
Okay.
It's been one of those days back to back. Lots of fun. Those are good
Okay.
days.
Can we export the chat though? So I have the
Yes.
questions. Okay.
So we can save
Export
the
the
chat.
chat.
Mhm.
And I will find people's emails address and I will send an email or Loom video answering them directly too. Or I can maybe even make a compilation video, maybe answering all of them. And then we can include that where everyone can see it. Maybe that's better. Because I think some people would want to hear the answers to these, I'm sure. So yeah, I'll make a whole compilation video and I'll send that to you, Julie, and we can get it to everyone answering those questions too. And then I can be organized and make sure I answer them productively. Let me see.
I'm also going to throw in there this little Talkadot. If you don't mind, Monica, can I share
No,
about this?
go for it right now. I need a second to clear my throat.
I'm an avid podcast listener, not just a podcast host. And one of the podcasts I was listening to yesterday morning, it was an interview with a person who created Talkadot, and they were talking about how you can really become a more effective presenter, speaker, however you want to call it. When you get this amazing feedback. And so anyway, I was presenting last night at Momentum Multifamily, and I just plugged this in and the feedback was so helpful. So as you are, presenting at meetup groups or wherever you're presenting, this tool, it's free and the feedback is absolutely phenomenal. I was blown away and instantly, sent it over. I'm like, Monica, this is amazing. But for what most of you are pursuing with your investing, it probably will lead to speaking and presenting. And so this type of feedback will really help you hone your craft so that you become more effective.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Is everyone close to being done? I can do the little quick recap here. I think most people look pretty done. So hard to tell when we're on our computer. It still looks like we're looking, but we have to fill stuff out. So I just wanted to do a quick recap because we covered so many parts. We promised these 3 destructive waves and the 4 ways this. So I was like, okay, I want to hone in on what those were again really quick. So the 3 most destructive problems on investors' websites was they were built backwards. Those were the slides with the iceberg. And the unclear avatar. So too much focus on demographics and missing the psychographics. And so that's where we dove in a little bit to that character development there and the difference between what a demographic and psychographic is. And then the 3rd most destructive problem is that they're not differentiated enough. And that was kind of a running theme through a lot of stuff we talked about today. But also we covered the 4 parts of branding that were missing in your marketing. So if you want to go back to that brand anatomy and look through it and say, okay, I haven't clarified a character or my positioning strategy, that can help you know where to go back to and then kind of implement it back forward again. But out of all of these different areas that we covered on the brand anatomy, which ones were ones that you guys struggle with the most in your business, do you think? Is it more of like the positioning, the character development, the verbal, or the visual? If you can drop that in the chat really quick, that would be really helpful to understand as well. What do you think you're going to struggle with or do struggle with the most in your branding out of the brand anatomy? Everything. Verbal expression, Jennifer, and everything. Awesome. Yes, I really hope that you guys now kind of know where to start on that. Verbal expression, I think, is one of the most time-consuming parts of the brand anatomy as well. So don't feel like, oh, this should take as long as all the other areas. It doesn't. It takes maybe 2 or 3 times as long as some of the other areas. So like you're kind of moving along and you get stuck in this area, like that is normal. That's okay. But yes, Alana too, having that internal strategy is definitely going to help you with then positioning and character development as well. And so I have frameworks for all of this that I do with my clients. I'm going to start offering a way to do this with groups instead of one-on-one at a time with a client and saying, okay, what is your mission? You know, and teaching the frameworks. I'm going to start doing this as a group later. As soon as I have that landing page kind of built out, I'll let you guys know so you can kind of take a look at it and see if it might be a fit. But some of these things are also described over in the Brand Anatomy podcast too. And that's on Spotify and Apple and Google. And so you can find and listen to some of those. The other things that we promised was how to find what's slowing your growth. So if you're still not really exactly sure where to start, go back to that flow chart. And when you download the slides from that QR code, then you can go through it again and say, okay, this is where I'm struggling with the most. Go back to the brand anatomy and figure out from there what you want to build. And then building a brand that's memorable and attracting champion investors, that's that character side. And surprisingly, probably the most fun part of the project that my clients are like, this is weird. I'm not like picking an avatar for like a video game. And then they're like, oh, I get it. I love this. And then how to make your website incomparable in your industry. Go ahead and just make some charts. It doesn't take a scientist. You don't have to be professionally trained how to do this. Look at websites, and being professionally trained is actually good. What do I see? What do they have? Just start making a graph of it and rate it. Do you rate their content as being professional or personal? Do you think it feels feminine or masculine? You can rate it all yourself, because you should be able to pick this up if they've done a good job. If they're mediocre and in the middle and not clear at all, they haven't done a good job. It's not you. It's not because you're not trained to pick it up. You should be able to pick it up. Anyone, almost a child, should be able to pick this kind of stuff up. Maybe not quite a child, a teenager. So those were all the parts that we covered today. I went through and tried to see if there was any other questions we could answer in like the next minute. But I think we almost did get to everyone's question. Does anyone have a question that might take like a minute that we haven't covered? You can unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat. Julie has a question.
I'm going to throw something in there, and that is, I'd appreciate it if everybody, no matter when you're watching this, because this will be accessible after the live event, just go onto the book face, send Steeve Breton, you know, Steve with 2 E's, send him a message and just say, thank you for introducing Monica to Julie, because it's just been revolutionary. I wouldn't have met Monica if it wasn't for Steve, and actually for his wife discovering Monica and all of that.
Yeah, I
so
worked with his wife, Marnie, first, and she's like, oh, my husband needs help with his website. And then it was history from there.
And it's all history. So just like we all have a ripple effect, but it would be really cool. That's one of those fun ways to just also make a connection with somebody and just say like, wow, thank you. It's paying forward even further. Like what started out with one person is like rippling out to so many more people. And that's what we all want our lives to do, I'm sure.
So Nathaniel asked, what should be my first step and an action plan? So I will make maybe a little follow-up video and hone in on that, because that's the ultimate question, I think, for sure. So I'll make a little follow-up response to that so that you guys can watch it whenever it's convenient for you. Alana, my services are on my website. However, as I move into next year, I'm no longer offering the top tier. And I'm only taking about 2 or 3 clients between now and the end of the year, because I want to focus on the group model as well. So there's 2 different ways to work with me. I wanted to have that landing page up so I could tell you guys like about the group a little bit more detail. That should be live within maybe the next week or 2, and I can share that so you can see. And then we literally like Nathaniel, the whole step in the plan of action, we do it together. We do each of the frameworks. Some of them just only need to be done one time. So we do it there together live. And then there's these other frameworks where it's constantly reuse, rinse and repeat as you're growing and marketing your business, but we can develop your brand together. The cool thing about doing it together is people learn better that way. When they see someone else trying to write their one-liner, it's so much easier to understand where someone might be failing in theirs, but it's even hard for me to write and create some of my own stuff. Sometimes I get so stuck in my own head, like, wait, how does this work? So it's like cutting your own hair, essentially. You can have a hairdresser who's fantastic at doing hair. She still needs help with her own hair. Sometimes you can't get to the back of your own head. So it's kind of the same with branding. So when we're doing it together, it can be very helpful. So I'll do that follow-up. And then, yeah, you guys can go to my website as soon as I have that other landing page up for that other offering for 2023. First group will be in the spring. And so, yeah, we'll stay in touch that way. And then maybe if we need to do another workshop on a certain area, maybe that character development, we might do that in the future.
Monica, thank you so much. And just for the people that end up watching this after the fact, I know there was a question in the chat that said, hey, you're doing these follow-up videos. How do people, if they're watching this later, can they shoot you an email? If so, what's that email so that they can get access to the follow-up videos?
Yep. So you can go to my website to fill out a form there to send me an email. But my email is Monica, and then it's at onthentic.com, ONTHENTIC.com. That's also in the slides. You'll see onthentic.com, Onthentic branding. So just Monica at onthentic.com. And yeah, I would love to answer questions. I'll write things out, but I like to do Loom so much faster, and I can show screens of things. I know Cody wanted to see some before and after examples. I used to have those types of things on my sites. I love before and afters. So yeah, I can create a couple like before and afters and send some of those out too. So I think I had some in an email. I can just forward you that old email blast that I had. But yeah, I love before and afters. They're so much fun.
They are amazing. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I know, Monica, and just like, thank you. I mean, you are an expert in this field for a reason. Your knowledge, it just pours out of you. And I appreciate your willingness to serve our community in this powerful way.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Warriors don't tell anyone. I have a secret heart for anyone, warriors in Rod's group, the best people. I've met just the most amazing people. I keep wanting to show up at the events and just keep connecting. So I'm glad I got to see all these new faces. Hopefully we can talk later and I get to know you guys too.
All right, you guys, we'll see you,
Thank you guys.
in the Warrior
Thank
Facebook
you, Julie.
group. Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch.
Bye.
We'll see you.